Hey YouTube land, it's Oshin, it's Tuesday afternoon, and I am throwing out another video. I'm really going to begin to pump up the level of my YouTube content creation. Today's video, I want to talk about the power of journaling, because in the last video I did with the trance, I recommended journaling. Everything I do, groundings, meditations, trances, stuff like that, I am going to become annoying about journaling before and after. And I realized that maybe the best thing I can do is give a talk on why I think journaling is so important to me. And the fact that, journaling really has a tremendous amount of value and power in it. First and foremost, for a lot of people in paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, or the occult, their journal is their book of shadows. It's stuff they've done magically, things they've felt in energy, stuff like that. And I want to say that right off the get-go. I do know some pagans and witches who keep like their emotional daily journal and their spiritual journal separate. Honestly, to those people, don't do that. Do your daily emotional life journal and your spiritual journal together, because honestly, like, they mesh up really well, and I've been doing it now for several months, and it really does show the difference spiritually for me as I work through things emotionally. The first thing I kind of want to start with is kind of my own story about how my current journaling practice came into existence. My current journaling practice is 45 minutes in the morning after I get up. It didn't start there at all. Um, you know, my journaling kind of just, I don't know, it started so long ago. I mean, really, it was the beginning of this year, about January. I mean, to be honest, and I'll explain later, there's other parts to this, but to be honest, I wanted to write a blog on having, grown up in earth-based spirituality and mostly around the polyamorous community, and that as an adult, I mean, even in my 15-year relationship with my husband who passed away, and my last relationship that was 2 years long, that was super shitty, they were both poly. I was with several other people in both of those relationships. And, I mean, did I have like primaries? Absolutely. But, I mean, I wanted to write a blog about that. And, here I am doing stuff on YouTube now. And it's very interesting because that blog never even started. So originally, that's kind of where the writing started, and this whole practice began to develop. However, in that, there came a moment of morphing. The writing changed, and it really became a very angry letter at my mother and my mother's side of the family. And I don't even actually have anything to do with my mother or my mother's side of the family. Frankly, I never want anything to do with them again. But really, that was sort of the first morph of the practice. Is it was supposed to be a blog. It morphed into a private angry letter that I was going to send. That particular portion was never sent. I did write a letter to my mother, who I want nothing to do with ever again. And, it's a beautifully written thing. However, it's incredibly private, so I'm not going to share it on Facebook or on YouTube. It's just private, and there's only a few people who have seen it outside of the person it was intended to be sent to. But within the deep, angry writing, the journaling became obsessive at that point. It wasn't, just random writing, it became very angry and emotional, and there was a lot of hurt and pain and just so many awful things that I had been carrying in my head and with me for all of my life. But it was obsessive because I would write for 4 or 5 hours a day every day. And, this went on for about a month and a half. And I was talking to a good friend of mine in New Jersey about it. And, it came up the amount of time I was spending. And, she knows me really well. Um, and she said, "Hey, I think this is a manic bipolar behavior. And, I am severely bipolar. Um, and you need to talk to your psychiatrist and your therapist about this. It's not healthy." Um, and I did actually end up talking to my psychiatrist and my therapist about it, and they agreed it was a manic bipolar behavior and that it wasn't healthy. Now, keep in mind, from about the beginning of February to the end of May, my mental health was completely out of control. Everything. I mean, my anxiety, my bipolar, my PTSD, my insomnia, everything was just out of control. And so, between the beginning of February to the end of May, I underwent 9 psych med changes. To be honest, on the journaling practice itself, my psychiatrist had very little to do with the boundaries and development of it. That was really the job of my psychotherapist. And, you know, but my psychiatrist was in the loop because it was linking into medication changes and decisions. Um, Obsessive journaling is bad. If you pick up a journaling practice and you start writing 5 hours a day, you need to talk to your doctor, your psychiatrist, or your therapist if you have one about it. It's not healthy. Now, writing for 3 minutes a day is also not enough to be called a practice. We're going to get into reasonable time practice later. First and foremost, I also want to make the statement that your journal is an incredibly private space. It is a place of freedom and self-expression about anything that's going on in your life, and really at no time should anyone ever be reading your journal. And I would strongly recommend caution out of what you share out of your journal. Now, I will say I do share certain stuff with my therapist, like a paragraph or maybe a sentence or two, because there are things I can send to her an email with a note that says, "Hey, I want to talk about this at the next session. I see my therapist twice a week." So be aware of that. I mean, if you've got like maybe one or two really good friends, I mean, I have like my best friend, she's like my sister, I share stuff with her. And, I also share a little bit with my dad now. But other than like my therapist, my sister, my best friend who's my sister, and my dad, virtually nobody else sees what's in my journal, like literally and virtually. Um, you know, the obsessive journaling did teach me something, though. I mean, it was unhealthy, but the thing it taught me was that I was able to express and write down what I was feeling. And, that was really important. And that lesson kind of came through in like the middle of March because we were starting to get the right balance of psychiatric medication, and I was in therapy twice a week. So, like, things were at least psychiatrically starting to stable out. And, towards the end of March, my therapist placed a boundary about writing for no more than an hour and a half a day. And, it worked. It was a little hard to get used to. It took about a week or so. But it worked. And I was okay with it after that. And really, from there, I sort of adjusted the time. And it was about the middle of April, early May, when I realized that I really only needed 45 minutes a day currently to get things done. I mean, there are times 40 minutes in, I just don't have any more to write. There are days where the timer goes off and I have to finish a couple sentences. You never really know. I mean, 45 minutes is reasonable for me and where my time, pulls, and energy are right now. So why journal? I've heard this question so many times from so many people. And, the reality is, as I've said, obsessive journaling is dangerous and bad, but it can also teach you things. Journaling is there to alleviate space and create space in your head. When you're walking around with all the stuff that happened to you as a kid or a teenager or as a young adult, I don't know about the rest of the world out there, but, most of my good friends at least, we all grew up in gloriously dysfunctional families and have a lot of issues because of it. I'm 33 years old and still working through stuff. It's amazing to work through, but, most of, like I said, my really good friends, it's like, yeah, we have issues. And we joke about it a lot. But, giving yourself a space to put feelings, issues, memories, what have you, down and get them out of your head is really freeing. It frees up a large amount of mental energy, which most of us need during the day. It makes us more present to our lives, which I'm going to get into in a little more detail here in a minute. I grew up orbiting various recovery 12-step programs, and, the one big thing, especially in 12-step programs, is that you don't want to live in your head, because living in your head is not going to be good for you when you're trying to be clean and sober. And my dad and I talk about it a lot, and, a lot of recovery is about selflessness and helping others. But by helping others, you're helping yourself. And really kind of what I want to say to that is that, living up here, living in this part of your body, only in your brain, that's a really, really small space up there. You've got this whole body, this big body that's yours. You own it. Live in your whole body. There's space. If you can kind of get out of living up here and live totally in your body, there's kind of space for everything there. Like I said, not having to carry the baggage and the emotions and the issues and the problems and what have you around with you in your head all the time, because you've got a private journal that you've got a lot of stuff written down in, is, a really great way to free up your life and be more present to your life. Right now I'm living with some fairly cool housemates. I'm about to, move into public housing. My letter that actually says I'm approved should be arriving sometime this week. I'm going to get approval to train a new mental health service pup. I just met my trainer. As I said in my last video, something kind of freaky with that. The trainer I'm going to be working with for the entirety of the training, his name is Brett. One of my best friends, Ashley, she and Brett went to the same dog training school to become certified service dog trainers and graduated in the same class. So that's a little freaky. I still think it's a little freaky. I talked about that in the last video I just did yesterday, or on Friday. And, so, like, just really, giving yourself space and your head space to have more to be present to life with is super important. The goal of my channel is dedicated to how do we deepen ourselves? How do we become whole humans? And part of being a whole human is having a sense of kind of what's behind you and what's in front of you, but most of it is about just being present to yourself and where you are right now. And journaling can really help give you that. It may not completely give you that. I mean, there are other things I do, i.e., meditations, trance work, stuff like that. But I mean, it's just, that's important. And my practice started 8 months ago. We're in, it started in the beginning of February, and it's the first part of September. I mean, I've been journaling for 8 months, and the thing that I will really say is the journal tracks the ups and downs. It tracked all of the med changes. It's just been a great space of tracking everything. And, I mean, in the last 2 to 3 months, my journal has really changed. It's not so much about kind of what was going on, is more to this is where I am, this is where I'm headed, and this is how I'm trying to get there. And that's very different and feels very unique to me now. Um, you know, One reason I journal is, again, I track everything, but being able to go back and look at stuff, like if something pops back into my head months after I've written on it, being able to go back and look at that is super important. And then, like, again, number two is it tracks kind of the up and down and the ebb and the flow. On tracking in your journal, my journal is completely disorganized. There are no times, there are no dates, there are no weeks. Throwing it out there because I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I've been doing it for too long, and frankly, I just don't want to change the way I do things for myself. Uh, but if you're going to pick up a practice, I would recommend at least having, the week of that journal so you know what week and what month and what year it was in. Because trust me, when I'm going back to look for something, I mean, I've got, in my backup, in the backup of my journal, I have like 300 pages. So, I mean, when I'm going back to look for something, it can be a really, really long hunt. So, learn from experience of my own. If you're going to pick up a practice, you might want to at least say, week of October 1st to October 7th, 2018, just so you have an idea of what week something might be in. Now creating and finding time to journal are the next things I'm going to get into here. And here are my suggestions. First and foremost, try to have a sense of your week on average. What is your average weekly routine over a 7-day period? So basically Monday to Sunday. I'm going to say this now, and I want to make this clear. No one has the exact same routine as anyone else. We're all different. We all have different pulls on our times. Kids, jobs, things we have to do, things that we may want to do. Everyone is different in their average routine because we're all different people and we all have different lives. My question is just to get an average sense of your routine, and maybe you already have it. Maybe you need to think about it and look at it. Once you've done that, find a journaling practice that works for you. My journaling practice, straight out sentences and paragraphs. That is the way I do it. That may not work for you. Literally just Google journal practice styles, and you'll pull up hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of different ways to journal. There's going to be something out there if you pick up a journal practice that's going to work for you. Find what works for you. Try out 2 or 3 different things. Find what works for you. And once you've found that, great. The next step is very simple and very hard at the same time. Dedicating yourself to doing it every single day. And here's a tip on that. If you hit a day, if you dedicate yourself to practice where you absolutely do not feel like doing your practice, that is the day you absolutely have to. This has happened to me 3 times, and every time I've made myself do it, I've always gotten something really super important out of it that I wouldn't have gotten out of it had I not forced myself to do the practice. That's vital. Now, Again, once you find what works for you and you can dedicate to it, now you need to get a sense of how much time you can give to it. Again, here, we're all different. We all have different lives. We all have different pulls, different calls, different places that our energy has to go. Get a sense of time. 5 minutes, I would say, is not a practice. 3 hours is obsessive. That's not a practice either. I would say 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. I would say really anything from 15 to 30 minutes is a great way to start. It's a great practice. Um, at least in my mind, like I said, mine's 45. It's just kind of where I ended up at. I like what I do right now. It works for me. I'm going to keep doing what works for me. Um, Once you've kind of figured out how much time you can dedicate every day into the practice, again, the next simple yet very hard step, just staying dedicated and doing it every single day. Now I want to finish up here with, this video is sincerely just about the power of journaling, and it came out mostly because I'm annoying about journaling in the other videos I do, and now you understand why. Whether or not you choose to pick up a journaling practice is fine. Or even if your only journaling practice is just journaling on the stuff I'm throwing out, that's fine too. If you are doing the trances, meditations that I'm throwing out, you're supposed to do each trance and meditation, 2 or 3 times over a week, and journal before and after. And if you do it 3 times, you're going to have 3 different entries in that situation, and that's going to track and show how the experience changed. It kind of proves my point that journaling actually does show change in your life. I'm just throwing that out there. Again, today was dedicated to the power of journaling and the really, truly awesome stuff it can bring into your life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a fabulous Tuesday. I will see you on Thursday because I am throwing out a new trance piece. Have a great couple of days. Oshin.